Hello, welcome to ONTIC's Connected Intelligence Podcast. I'm Fred Burton, ONTIC's Executive Director of Protective Intelligence. This podcast offers valuable insights and practical advice to help you navigate the complexities of modern corporate security shared by leaders and innovators in the field. Now, on to the discussion. Hi, I'm Fred Burton, here today with Adrienne Galbrecht. Adrienne is our team lead for Strategic Intelligence Services here at ONTIC. As ONTIC's team lead, she oversees ONTIC's intelligence services and managed services teams who provide subject matter expertise, training, and ongoing support to clients across multiple industries. Prior to joining ONTIC, Adrienne had over a decade of experience in law enforcement as a crime and intelligence analyst. During that time, she served on the executive boards for the Mid-America Regional Crime Analysis Network, MARCAN, and the International Association of Crime Analysts, allowing opportunities to be part of the larger conversation around the development and future of crime and intelligence analysis programs. Adrienne, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much.
You know, we've been talking a lot about the intelligence cycle, but before we get into it, how has your background in law enforcement helped give you an edge when it comes to gathering intelligence in the private sector?
Sure. So I spent a little over a decade in law enforcement. I started on the sworn side, but spent the majority of my time in crime and intelligence analysis. And it really gave me a great foundation and skill set to transition into the private sector. I was lucky to be at what I consider well-funded agencies during my tenure, but in the public sector, there's always a struggle to get money for software and tools, and competition between that kind of sworn and civilian side on using those funds is a real thing. So, long story short, that ends up making law enforcement analysts really scrappy. We're great at
Hmm.
doing more with less. That's everybody's favorite phrase. Finding creative solutions and crowdsourcing our knowledge to better the field as a whole, whether that's sharing best practices or accessing more resources. We all know gathering intelligence and working through the cycle, it takes a lot of time. And if you're a one person shop kind of expected to do that and more, you have to have a strong network of people you can rely on. I know a lot of these things resonate with Intel practitioners on the private side too, because we tend to share a lot of the same struggles. All that said, I think one of the big things that really gave me an edge was the leeway I was given. Law enforcement's a bit of a different beast, and I was fortunate to have a commander and mentor who backed me and really encouraged me to spread my wings so I could dive deeper into specialty areas like OSINT and into different things to really pave the path for the unit that we created. I learned a lot of lessons about advocating for yourself and your unit, and I carry those to this day in my work in the private sector too.
Yeah, I look back on my time period in local and federal law enforcement and obviously transitioning into the private sector many, many decades ago now. Adrian is one that I look back fondly. And I think that at least when you start thinking about the kind of work that you have to get yourself down in the weeds with in the public sector in law enforcement is really kind of a great skill set to transition into the private sector. Now, what are some of the common challenges seen throughout the intelligence cycle and how can they be mitigated?
That's a great question. And there are lots and lots of challenges that can come up throughout the cycle. And the process is very dynamic. It's for sure not just to go around once and call it good. You could find yourself in a certain part of the cycle and realize you need to go back and do more. So I'll call out three main challenges because I could go on for a long time. The first would be a lack of direction or specificity in the planning stage, that very first stage. And if you work in intelligence long enough, you'll experience when this goes wrong and just how frustrating it can be. The main way I mitigate it is by being sure to ask probing questions and encourage the analysts I work with to do the same to make sure there's alignment and clear direction. It's not a fun feeling, and I've been there when you hear somebody say, that's not really what I wanted after you so much time working on something and, produced a deliverable. So also, it really highlights another potential need, and that's that, in my opinion, our Intel teams need to start interacting with groups within the organization because what we've seen over time is that kind of security and intelligence function has expanded to touch other parts of organizations as it should. And so sometimes we need to act as educators to make sure those newer groups that are interacting with us understand what we can do and kind of what questions we can help answer. So it's a little bit of advocacy and a lot of asking questions to make sure you know what people really, really want.
And a lot of education for other groups too, at least letting them know that you have a resource that can do this for them to help them on whatever it is from their business focus.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I went to the ARIP conference recently and I heard similar talk, but I think that best practice, aside from the cycle, just in intelligence in general, is forging those relationships before somebody needs to come to you with something. Having that relationship with those other groups within your organization allows for a lot more opportunity to educate them and to help, again, show what you can do. Some of the groups might not realize you can help them with the issues they're running up against. So, don't be afraid to kind of get out of your box and go forge those relationships because it's much better to do it before things hit the fan and you're scrambling.
Yeah, very good advice. Now, how has the intelligence cycle evolved with advancements in technology and data analytics?
So one of the things that I really love about this cycle is how it stood the test of time and evolved to incorporate new technology. So, as you kind of talked about in the article that you posted to LinkedIn, the cycle has roots in World War II, so it's seen a ton of advancements over the years. This more recent rise in the digital age and big data in general, that's just one of the latest iterations of things that have challenged it. So it's definitely that idea of big data has impacted the cycle in multiple ways. It's increased demand for automation, and as we're starting to see the use of things like AI driven technologies. Advanced analytical tools have upped our ability to parse through those large, huge data sets, and digital reporting has shifted how we can share and protect the information we send out, especially as so many of these organizations have become global, so you have all sorts of things to take into account. No longer can you just PDF something every time and send it out. You might need something a little more secure. So the list truly goes on and will continue to. That's really the beauty of it. The mainstay through all of the history and evolution, which I think absolutely deserves to be called out, is the Intel practitioner themselves. Yes, I'm biased, I will be the first to tell you,
Me
but
too.
right? But I've been around long enough to know you can't replace that human element. There have been so many advancements in tech, and with the growth of things like AI, I've heard a lot of questions around how's this gonna impact in the intelligence field? How will this impact my job? And it's an exciting time to be here because the future really is now. I see a world where the tech and the AI advancements help with that automation piece we were talking about, help us parse through the data so the analyst can actually focus on his or her time on analyzing information to work more efficiently. I don't see it replacing us.
Yeah, I don't either. And that's a very good point. I think that human variable is always going to have to be there. How important is it for practitioners to be aware of biases and cognitive limitations while working through the cycle?
So, I mean, you can appreciate this with your background. I think it's really crucial. There's no other way to say it. It's absolutely crucial to maintaining the integrity and effectiveness of the cycle. As practitioners, we have to be aware of our limitations and our biases at every step of the way because if you're not, your analysis is not probably going to be sound. If I'm asked to do a travel report in an area of the world I don't have expertise in, you can bet your tail I'm going to find a resource that can supply that information. And I think it comes back to that scrappiness we talked about. I might not be able to do it, but I know somebody who can, and I have a ready made network to do it because in the end, we're all working towards that same thing. We want to get that good intelligence, that solid information so that our coworkers and kind of our audience we're delivering it to can do their jobs safely and effectively. Um, yeah, sorry, were you gonna go ahead?
No, I was going to say, Adrian, that it was at least back on my watch when you start looking at how you can just jump to conclusions. I know we experienced that, for example, at the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City, when immediately we looked at the damage and the carnage and the size and the scope, and the modeling said, that must be Hezbollah. So the whole focus of the investigation was on international terror, and then lo and behold, Timothy McVeigh comes out of nowhere. We immediately, kind of
Yeah,
completely bypass the cycle and immediately jump to conclusions that we had a active terrorism group involved.
yeah. Well, and it can be so easy to do. I mean, it's part of human nature to try to fill in some of those gaps. And you get in groups and things like groupthink, it just happens naturally. So you have to be super aware of it. And I think it also goes without saying that when you're doing intelligence, when you're creating deliverables, having other people review, your product or whatever you're creating before it's finalized is crucial and really a best practice. Along with that, of course, is ensuring that your team comes from a diverse background so you get different perspectives because it is super easy. In law enforcement, we'd run into it. A lot of us had similar backgrounds, so you kind of start narrowing in on the same thing and you lose the forest for the trees, which you really have to protect against.
We'll get back to the conversation in just a moment. But first, I wanted to mention ONTIC's integrated research solution. As we've discussed throughout the episode, collecting timely, accurate intelligence is critical to ensure that every stage of the investigation process is actionable. I highly recommend that you click the link in the episode description to see how ONTIC can help your security program achieve connected intelligence with our integrated research solution. Looking over the horizon, do you see any trends or changes in the intelligence cycle? For example, I know you touched a little bit about AI, and we hear about that every day at ONTIC, right? Do you see AI changing the intelligence cycle in any capacity?
So, we did hit on this a bit. I definitely see the integration of advanced tech like AI coming in and helping supplement. I don't see it changing like the cycle. It's such a robust and like long-standing cycle. I don't see it fundamentally changing it. I see it impacting the way we work ourselves through it. So, also when I think of things like how the cycle could change over time or evolve, full disclosure, I'm not super involved in cybersecurity, but with some of the leaks that have, hit the news recently,
Never
it
ending.
I know, it really is, and the increasing level of sophistication with them is also something that I see a lot of potential if they're not already doing it, but leveraging things like the Intel cycle in cybersecurity, particularly